Why does it look like the sculptor who made this has never seen a whale before? This sculpture comes from the Roman Empire in the 3rd century AD, and it's one of the earliest depictions of the biblical story of Jonah and the whale. But you might have noticed there's something a little off about the whale. The whale looks like he has the head and front paws of a dog and the tail of an eel. This is not the only example of a Jonah and the whale with a really strange looking whale. This sarcophagus from the Vatican also shows Jonah with a very dog-like whale. This one from the British Museum shows the whale with a snout and even paws. Even though Jonah and the whale is a Christian story, the sculptor was clearly drawing on pagan mythology about sea monsters. These stories and artistic traditions developed in a time before the ancient Greeks had a solid understanding of the anatomy of whales. In the 8th century BC, Homer wrote down an ancient story about Heracles saving the city of Troy and the princess Hesione from a sea monster. There's also a similar myth about Andromeda being sacrificed to a sea monster and being saved at the last minute by Perseus. We have several earlier artistic depictions which show the sea monster as a combination of mammal, reptile, and fish elements. This Minoan clay seal, for example, seems to depict the sea creature as having a dog or a bear head. This Hydria also shows a slightly cuter sea beast who has a dog-like head and an eel's body. And behind him we can see a very rare depiction of a seal on ancient Greek pottery. Sometimes they made these whales look like giant snakes, for example in this cup here. Sometimes artists were even influenced by real fossils from either whales or prehistoric giant fauna, such as this black figure Crater, which came from Corinth in the 5th century BC. Here the sea monster's skull is directly based on a fossil skull of a Samotherium, which is a distant relative of the modern giraffe. Until the 5th century BC, the ancient Greeks didn't actually have a separate word for whale. Instead, they used the catch-all term ketos, or sea monster, to describe all sorts of real-life and mythological marine animals. But all that started to change at some point in the 5th century BC when the Greeks started using the word phalina to describe whales in particular. Nevertheless, the word ketos or sea monster remained in use, and it continued to lump whales in with all sorts of other mythological sea creatures. And probably the average person living in ancient Greece or Rome would not have seen a real whale. We still have early Christian artists copying pagan mythological sea monsters.